Katulad ng sinabi namin sa unang episode dito sa Herstory Talks, no, pag-uusapan natin ang iba't ibang mga women from our history.
Hello ulit everyone, I'm Julia.
And I'm Kat.
And we welcome you to another episode of our podcast! Yay! Ayan. And since we were able to talk about women from the Spanish colonization in our first episode, it's time to move on to a different era.
Move on. So, anong era ba yan? Speak Now, Folklore, 1989, alam ko na. Fearless, tulad ng mga women natin from our history, tama?
Si Swiftie naman. Pero hindi, kasi the era that we'll focus on for today's video are the American and Japanese occupation.
Okay. Speaking of, so ayun na nga, the American occupation officially began on May 1, 1898 during the Battle of Manila Bay. Meanwhile, the Japanese occupation was only from 1942 to 1945, so 3 years.
Mabilis lang. So now, para simulan ng ating unang kwento, have you ever wondered, Kat, kung sino ang pinakauna nating beauty queen?
Nako, I have no idea. Sino ba? Si Gloria Diaz, ayun. Naiisip ko sa mga beauty queens back then. Kasi naging Miss U siya, diba? Pero sino nga ba?
Well, kasi diba, if you look at it, tayo mga Pilipino are big fans of beauty pageants,
Yes.
katulad nga ng Miss Universe. And actually, I think that a reason for our obsession is because we could see that it could potentially change our lives. Kasi diba, it gives the winners a bigger platform and more opportunities, which is what our featured woman aimed for.
So, Purificación Pura Villanueva Cala was born in Iloilo City to Emilio Villanueva and Emilia Garcia. So, Pura became the very first Miss Philippines with the title Queen of the Manila Carnival noong 1908 at just 22 years old. So, halos kaedaran natin.
Wow! Pero prior to being a beauty queen, Pura was already a writer and columnist for El Tiempo, which was a weekly magazine in Iloilo, and she even established the Asociación of Feminista Ilonggo in 1906. She also started an advocacy for clean milk para sa mga bata through a puriculture center in Panay Island. At for everyone's information, ang mga puriculture ay lugar kung saan unborn children may receive prenatal care through closely paying attention to pregnant women.
Dahil din sa mga efforts ni Pura, the first suffrage bill reached the Philippine Assembly noong 1907. And she joined the Manila Carnival, which was where Asia-Pacific countries like in United States and Singapore would come to Manila each year to conduct trade and tourism.
Yan. So during that time, the Philippines was a colony of the United States nga, di ba? And they used the Manila Carnival as a venue to unite the regions through economic trade and cooperation. And the very highlight of this month-long celebration was the election for the title of Miss Manila Carnival.
So, si Marjorie Radcliffe Colton, who was Miss USA nung time na yun, was also known as Miss Occidental, and she went head-to-head with Pura, diba? Who was Miss Oriental. So, the battle for the crown was intense, but in the end, Pura won the title. Wow, palaban. She also had a lot of supporters, and karamihan sa kanila came all the way from Iloilo to support her.
After the Miss Manila Carnival, Pura stayed in Manila and continued her work as a journalist for Women's Outlook, which was a suffragist publication. Tapos, she also became the president of the Women's Club here in Manila.
So, Pura Calaw's legacy as the first ever Miss Philippines was not only because of her beauty, but also because of her efforts to aid women and children. At ayan, dyan na nga pa nagtatapos ang story ng ating first featured woman.
Alam mo, Kat, I think that many of our beauty queens follow the example of Pura as they continue to use their platforms to advocate for many causes.
At dahil dyan, lilipat na tayo sa susunod nating kwento, which not only features one woman, but 20, ang dami, di ba? Ito pa, our national hero, Rizal, dedicated a letter to our next set of featured women because, like us, he admired what they have done.
Yan. So the women of Malolos are a group formed by the descendants of the 4 major mestizo Sangley clans of Malolos, namely the Tiongson, Tantoco, Reyes, and
Ayun na
Santos.
nga. So, yung women of Malolos consisted of the following.
From the Reyes clan, si Alicia, si Juana, si Leoncia, si Olympia, si Rufina, si Eugenia naman sa Tanchanco clan, and si Aurea. And sa Tantoco naman, si Basilia, si Teresa, si Maria. Sa Tiongson, si Anastasia, si Basilia, si Paz, si Aleja, si Mercedes, si Agapita, Filomena, Cecilia, Feliciana, and sa Uitangkoy, si Alberta.
Ayan.
Dami.
Tapos, according to Sir... Gabi, oo eh. Ang dami. According to Sir Daniel Tantoco, the women of Malolos and the other ladies of their town contributed to the revolution in numerous ways when the outbreak of the revolution happened in Manila.
So, under Isidoro Torres, the women helped the revolutionaries by preparing food and being lookouts or messengers. So, they also, nakaisip sila ng imaginative ways to carry or send messages. And one of them was how Basilia Tantoco would stitch notes in small pieces of paper inside her saya. So, ayan, later on, Jose Rizal would write a letter dedicated to the 20 women for their outstanding participation.
So although the School of the Women of Malolos closed down in May 1889, their aspirations didn't stop. Some of them became members of the National Red Cross, while the others became the founding members of the Malolos Committee of the Asociación de Feminista de Filipinas in 1906, which was a national women's organization that aimed to improve the welfare of women in all sectors.
So, ayun, since the U.S. insular government did not discriminate based on sex or religion, so many Filipino women saw numerous opportunities and possibilities for them, causing si Concepcion Felix Calderon to organize the very first women's association in the Philippines, the Asociación Feminista de Filipinas o AFF noong July 13, 1905.
Ayan. So the goal of AFF was to go beyond what it meant to be a Filipina in society, which at that time was called the Mujer de la Casa, which translated to women of or for the house. So when the local AFF committee in Malolos was organized on December 25, 1905, the Pariancillo Barrio Committee met on February 25, 1906.
So ayun, 10 sa women of Malolos joined this committee, which were si Teresa, si Maria Tantoco, Vicenta Tantoco, si Teodera Tantoco, si Basilia Tantoco, sa Uitangkoy si Alberta, sa Tiongson si Mercedes, si Agapita, si Feliciana, and si Filomena.
Ayan.
Dami na.
Oo, dami talaga eh. So one of the major aims of the AFF was the education of women, which the women of Malolos had worked on under the Spanish occupation. The AFF was also concerning themselves with the plight of the poor and the underprivileged, which was related to the work they did at the Red Cross.
So yung AFF also visited women and children sa prison. Nag-distribute sila ng books about morality and work for government reforms in penitentiaries. Okay, tongue twister yan. So, their advocacy also included better working conditions for women in factories, reduced hours of work, and more hygienic conditions.
Aside from that, some other things that the AFF worked on included going against the practice of fathers, borrowing money and have their daughters pay back the debt, and they also lightened the burden of domestic servitude of women and children younger than 18 years old. Tapos, they minimalized prostitution, alcoholism, gambling, and juvenile weddings.
Grabe, no? So, ayan na nga. Diyan na nagtatapos ang discussion natin for the American occupation. And I think the women of Malolos are a great example nga of what happens when we work together.
At dahil tapos na tayo sa women from the American occupation, we will now talk about the women from the Japanese occupation. And sakto kasi the first woman we'll be talking about is someone I've mentioned in our first episode, di ba, Kat?
So, by the way, bago natin siya pag-usapan, no, kung may Commander Liway during the martial law era, which is mapapanood natin yung story niya sa 2018 film na Liway, meron din Commander Liwayway from the Japanese occupation. Both were leaders and revolutionaries, but from different eras. And yung women na pag-uusapan natin is from the Japanese period.
That's right. The woman in our history that I admire, Remedios Gomez Paraiso, who was also known as Commander Liwayway, was born in the year 1919 in Mexico, Pampanga.
So, si Commander Liwayway commanded Squadron 3, 5th, and was the chief of the Military Provision Division of Hukbalahap sa Central Luzon. So, lumaki siya in a well-off peasant family in Pampanga. And as a child, she embraced the ideals of her father, si Basilio Gomez, when it came to the social and political issues ng time nila.
Oo. But during the Japanese occupation, Commander Liwayway's father was executed and his body was displayed in public, and it served as a warning to those who dared to defy the orders of the Japanese. So, Remedios feared for the safety of her family, and they decided to flee to Tarlac along with other Huk members.
So, ayun nga. So, Remedios studies communist ideals, di ba? And, ayun, yung guerrilla strategies and tactics. Then, after completing her Huk training, she was baptized as Liwayway and was first assigned sa medical team where she tended to wounded guerrilla. So, si Remedios became a leader amongst her former Huk comrades. And when yung Huk organization formed the Squadron 3/5, they chose Liwayway to be the commander.
Ayan. So Commander Liwayway led about 200 men. And their main goal was to encourage the civilians to support the Huks. But her confidence as a military leader led to her organizing military sessions for her troops.
So according to Commander Liwayway herself, by the time the reinforcements of the Philippine Constabulary arrived, they had already overcome the Japanese troops. And she was considered to be one of many figures in military history that debunk gender roles and prejudices.
Ayan. So although Commander Liwayway assumed a masculine role in the movement, she still preserved her femininity by combing her hair, putting manicure on her nails, and wearing her iconic red lipstick before going to battle. O, diba? Ganda lang.
Ganda lang.
So, Commander Liwayway sadly passed away last 2014 at the age of 95.
Ayan na nga. So, sana nakita nyo why Julia and many others admire Commander Liwayway. And sana may she be an example for all to not stereotype. So, with that being said, it's time to talk about our last story for this episode.
Ayan.
Sino ba yan?
So, Lydia Gelidon was born on September 15, 1927 to Quintin Gelidon and Catalina Del Valle. She was only 14 years old and was in her second year in high school at La Concordia College when World War II broke out.
So, ayun, si Lydia was considered to be a model student kasi she was intelligent and she also always earned excellent remarks. But, despite this, her parents didn't agree to her joining the Filipino-American guerrilla movement.
Yan.
Sad.
So, Lydia and her sister Ruth would go to town and buy the weekly supplies of their unit. So with Lydia gathering news of enemy movements. Tapos, she would even pass through Japanese sentries with secret notes and money hidden in her hair or soon on her belt. Lydia would also raise funds by organizing benefit programs with her as the main performer.
Pero ayun nga, no August 18, 1944, yung Japanese soldiers arrested Lydia. And although she was under interrogation and horrible torture, she remained silent. Despite the torture, the other female detainees admired her courage. And Lydia even consoled them and helped them in little ways.
Ayan. So Lydia's cellmate sadly saw her for the last time in November 1944, and as she was being led out, she waved at them with a cheerful smile. Lydia was then brought to the Bilibid prisons in Azcaraga Street in Manila, where she was executed on November 27. Lydia then earned the title Teenage Guerrilla Heroine of World War II.
So, ayun na nga, medyo mabigat yung ating last story for today's episode. Pero, like Lydia, it's important to remain, diba, positive, even in little ways.
Ayan. And just like that, we've once again reached the end of our episode. So we hope that like Pura Kalaw, the women of Malolos, Commander Liwayway, and Lydia Gelidon, we use our abilities and talents for the betterment of not just ourselves, but for others as well.
Yes, and sino may alam, diba? Yung abilities na to might influence people and might also be utilized for a greater cause.
Yan. So again, if you want to read more about the women we've mentioned, you can always check the links below to our sources. Ayan.
Links. Check the link. So, mukhang kailangan na talaga natin magpaalam, Julia.
Oo nga eh. Pero don't worry, because we'll be back for more stories about the women of our past. Kaya stay tuned lang.
Once again, this has been Kat.
And Julia, and we'll see you again next time only here in Herstory
Herstory
Talks.
Talks.
Bye!
Bye, guys.